Silksong is amazing. Game of the year material. The shootout between this and Expedition 33 is going to be in somebody's history textbook 6 generations down. And I wouldn't be doing videos on it if I didn't love the game and love playing it. So, now that none of you can legally get mad at me, let's complain a bit. I like hard games. I like grinding for hard games and then beating a hard boss. And so do a lot of you. Over half of you are Dark Souls fans, I would wager. Like, I don't even need to explain this concept. But it's the type of hard Silksong chooses to be that I'm not a fan of. There's Bale the Dread difficult, and then there's Ancient Dragon from Dark Souls 2 difficult. If a boss is too hard or too easy, for example, the solution to that is kinda low maintenance. Buff this attack, nerf that attack, make this one do double damage, but make it slower, just, I don't know, just minor tuning that end up making the experience better overall. But if your fans think a runback is difficult, then like, how do you even respond to that? Like, what are you gonna do? Patch a whole ass area out of the game? You worked hard on that, you're not erasing that shit. The obvious response would just be to place a bench somewhere right before the boss, but that sounds much more difficult to do in practice without just adding a whole separate room. And sometimes the area's geometry just doesn't allow for that in a convenient way. All I know is I'm not alone in thinking this. Like, very, very not alone. And I'm also not alone in accepting the game's flaws and loving it regardless. And right now, I think the single greatest flaw I've found in Silksong is its issues with bench placement. Let's set the diving board of this video right on top of a boss most of you didn't even fight because you finished the first part of the Flea Caravan and didn't need to fight it. You don't even know there was a boss here. The Moorwing isn't a hard boss, but it's not a pushover. If you're in Greymoor, you're knee-deep into the double damage gimmick by now and are slowly realizing it's not really, it's not a gimmick anymore. It's just how most bosses are. Either it's double damage or it's something I've started calling dummy damage because it'll do exactly 1 damage twice. And I think that's dumb as hell. If you're fighting the Moorwing, you're at a point in the game where it's slowly setting in that this is just something you're gonna have to deal with. The runback itself isn't awful, it's just a few rooms with useless floater-type enemies that don't really do anything as long as you don't look at them funny. But there is one particularly annoying enemy you'll have to dodge past called a Threadraker, which, cool as fuck name, by the way, like goddamn, like props, honestly. And this dude has telegraphs that just cannot be read by a mortal man. I'll think he's going for a rushing stab and then he'll suddenly jump backwards and throw his pitchfork at me, resulting in me almost always getting hit and almost always feeling incredibly stupid afterwards. It's easy to claw line over him, but you probably don't have that ability yet, so your two options are to just fight him up front or downstrike over his ass and hope his first attack is a rushing stab, because if he decides to immediately jump backwards when he sees you, you're just taking damage, and you're gonna have to be fine with that. This is a very innocuous example of what I would consider to be a runback, because it's certainly on the lesser half of difficulty, but it also serves as a precursor for the game's more punishing runbacks introduced later on. Because the fact that the runbacks themselves have a visible difficulty slope tells me they absolutely did this shit on purpose. Hunter's March is a pointless area. Hunter's March has a pointless boss that you can defeat to get a pointless crest that you'll never use because its moveset is also pointless. How pointless? Let's just say pointless enough for the boss to warrant its own grand hunt quest later on in Belheart, where you fight a harder variant of said boss because you're doing it above fucking molten lava that will burn your lady nuts off. I love the bosses in this game, but the savage Beastfly finds itself so far removed from the top shelf of this game's bosses that it's reaching terminal velocity and I'm afraid it's going to kill someone when it hits the ground. It's like putting the drop shadow effect on aerial bold and then acting like you did something cool, like, oh fuck, there's lava now. Damn. Hunter's March is up there with Wisp Thicket, both vying for first place in the competition of Silksong's most useless areas like an Olympic foot race. But at least the boss in Wisp Thicket is kinda cool in concept and also a complete pushover if you have the Delver Drill. Nothingizing the admittedly equally oppressive run back to Father of the Flame, so I don't care about it as much. I care about the one in Hunter's March because it's a repeat boss, it's an area you can trick yourself into believing is necessary, the closest bench is at least 5 room scenes away with plenty of opportunities to take unnecessary damage along the way, and is one of the first bosses you encounter with a double damage gimmick that also spawns minions. You like grinding Hall of Gods so much? Well here, let's have people fight the Ascended Collector as the 5th fucking boss in the game. And the crest you get for finishing the fight is probably my least favorite, if I'm being honest. It only has 4 slots to start, no blue slots, you get the Wanderer crest from the chapel in Wormways, the Reaper crest has really good support utility and a really comfortable downward pogo, the Witch crest is probably the most busted crest in the whole whole game despite the long-winded series of missions it's locked behind, and you can upgrade the default Hunter crest reasonably early as long as you remember the Needle Gate exists at the very start. I just don't feel like there's any point to the Beast crest when every other crest the game gives you feels like a more useful option, just like all the time. And it's all locked behind a frustrating run back through about half of the Hunter's March area. This is ultimately why this one got under my skin so much, I think. I'm not going after the last judge or a necessary boss that I know needs clapping for progression's sake. I'm just fighting this obese mosquito in a church somewhere because I'm bored and stubborn and stupid. People might not even agree with this one that much. I don't know, maybe I just suck at the combat and the savage Beastfly isn't really that hard, but like holy shit, I feel like I struggled so much more than I should have with this boss. The Wisp Thicket area isn't the sole example of a bad run back, but it does take all the elements I described in Hunter's March and make them much worse. And I can only assume that's how it is because you need double jump to access Wisp Thicket from the very top of Greymoor, which also contains lots of mid to end game platforming you probably won't be ready for unless you have certain abilities. The run back is made difficult because you are at a point in the game where things are supposed to be difficult. Like again, it's very obviously purposeful what they did here. The burning bugs summon flame wisps that deal double damage, but that can be countered with the magma bell. And yes, the Hunter's Journal calls them burning bugs. Like that's not just some 3 AM laziness I came up with myself. The game literally calls them that. Also, don't make the same mistake I did here and take the Witch Crest into this boss because you can't siphon HP from the flame diodes. I'm assuming because they aren't technically living organisms like everything else, so you won't be able to heal at all if you do this. This is another inoffensive run back that isn't too bad, but only because the boss waiting for you at the end is complete and total chocolate cake with vanilla sprinkles if you have the Delver Drill, or if you just know how to pogo off of shit. Or if you just know how to play the damn game. The run back feeling inoffensive has nothing to do with the actual run back itself. The run back itself sucks balls, and I'm using this as my first bit of evidence for my previous statement involving the difficulty slope of run back routes. And it's not my only one because it's only gonna get worse from here. This is the cornerstone example I've seen people use in this game so far for terribly frustrating runbacks, and I can't confidently say it doesn't deserve that reputation. It's not even the distance of the runback as much as it is the resistance in the runback. This is the only area in the game that contains the judge enemies, and the conch flies practicing their Valorant trick shots honestly don't help the frustration at all. It adds up to what I would say is an excessive amount of resistance for an area that also demands precision platforming while not giving you all the abilities that would have made this easier, since you don't get the claw line and fade down cloak until Act 2. The amount of times I could have sworn I stuck the landing on the very bottom pixel of a jumpable wall only for the floor to suddenly grow teeth and send me halfway back to the goddamn bench with 2 less HP. Yeah, even basic hazards in this game do double damage now. The last judge isn't really even that challenging when you remember the magma bell exists, and you can just throw that on and suddenly her entire second phase becomes 50% less threatening, effectively eliminating the boss and the miserable series of circumstances that led to her functioning vital organs. But that means a grand total of jack and shit when you arrive to the function with 3 HP and a silk spool with 2 notches on it. There have been so many times where I step outside and get clapped by the very first conch fly testing out his new aimbot. Like inflation out here brutalizing everyone here in this economy, and I swear to God, this conch fly just dropped 50 bucks on like Cheat Engine Premium or whatever the hell. I either get sniped or I successfully avoid the snipe and then undershoot the jump and then get eaten by the floor. Like this shit is blue smelter demon levels of AIDS. Had I not done some poking around in a very particular poison swamp, I would have been extremely comfortable with saying this area proudly owns the worst run back in the game. And sadly, it's not. There is one that's worse. And as soon as I said the words poison swamp, those who have had the displeasure of finding this area and existing in it for more than 15 seconds knows exactly where the last part of this video is going. So let's all hop on the Bell Beast and have a nice fruitful expedition over to the blight town of Silksong. Groal the Great is an unassuming boss hiding behind a gauntlet room in northern Bilewater, separating you from the bottom entrance to the putrefied ducks area. And I now know that place exists because I've since whooped the shit out of him and played more of the game, but at the time I snagged this map footage, I didn't have it unlocked, because I died once, saw the run back that I had to do, and then immediately became motivated to make this video. The boss itself isn't even that eventful or difficult, like the bitch looks like a close-up shot from an old SpongeBob episode. But having your boss fight be be prefaced by a whole-ass gauntlet of some of the most exhaustingly difficult amalgamations of sprite work means the gauntlet itself is also getting counted as part of the runback. All of this without mentioning the only bench between you and the travel station is a fucking scam. This could have been the single iota of silver lining in a town-rupturing shrapnel storm of shitty enemies and precision platforming I have to force myself through like Arthur Fleck forces his way through one-liners. The boss also has this gimmicky grab attack he sometimes hits you with that gradually saps your HP, and if you're good at button spamming, you can escape from it only having taken 2 damage. But if you didn't know that and you thought the whole thing was scripted, like my galactically dense ass, you're just gonna sit there and think it'll be over soon while unknowingly sending Hornet to a moderately humorous, easily preventable death. If dying here was what motivated me to make this video, then I feel like not saying it's the worst runback in the game would just be dishonest on my part. If the last judge is Blue Smelter Demon, then this whole area is just frigid outskirts. Okay, I'm throwing around a lot of DS2 references here, and I hope everyone knows what they mean because I'm too pissed to clear it up. Okay, I'm gonna clear it up a little bit. I called the last judge the Blue Smelter Demon because the runback is fairly short, but there's a lot of pointless shit in it. Whereas Bilewater is long and exhausting, and there's also a lot of pointless shit in it for like no reason. However, there is a second shard of silver lining here in this nuclear shit pile, and that is the bench you can access right here on the map by going here and breaking this wall, dealing with the maggots until you find another breakable wall, and then taking that into a secret area with a bunch of lamps and a bench lined right up front and center for yo ass. And you want to know the hilarious part? It still sucks. The most difficult platforming in the whole area hugs the northeastern tip of the Bilewater map, which is just before they give you the bench, so you still have to thug it out. I was holding out hope that the gauntlet of enemies leading up to the boss was just a one-time thing, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. The game expects you to do the whole fucking thing just over again. Bilewater just finds an alarming amount of ways to frustrate and disappoint everyone who finds it. I think plenty of other people have already made my point for me, but this is still a fantastic game with a fantastic amount of exploration to be had. I just wish it handled things a little better than it currently did. That's a small little criticism. That's really the only problem I have with the game so far, like at all. It's just, I don't know, man. FromSoft already learned this lesson like 11 some odd years ago, that players just don't respond well to this kind of difficulty. But it's still a good game. It's a great game. Like, I'm probably going to be talking about this shit for the next 3 years, if I'm being honest. I didn't write an outro again, so fucking bye, I guess.